Okay, so tomorrow you have a test. So my first suggestion for getting ready for that would be to go to your headline page. If you go down to news, double click on learning targets, and that will bring up this document. For your test tomorrow, you should be able to explain what an inequality is. So hopefully you should be able to tell me that's a greater than, less than, or equal to sign. You should be able to graph an inequality on a number line, explain what a compound inequality is, explain the two types of compound inequalities, which should be your and or, graph a compound inequality, and also explain what absolute value is. And hopefully you know that that is the brackets that make the value inside there positive. We spoke about in class how it just means how far away from zero you are. So any negative numbers will turn to a positive number, and a positive number remains the same. So I'd like you to get out a sheet of notebook paper and do the following questions with me to make sure you're prepared for tomorrow. So I'd like you to write down this problem right here, pause the video, and complete it. Once you have the answer complete and graphed, start the video again and check to see if you're right. Okay, so hopefully you completed this problem on your own to see if you knew how to do it. At least gave it a try. Here you have 1/4 x is less than -3. So here's my x. I need to get it by itself. So I have to get rid of this 1/4 somehow. And how we can get rid of it is it's 1/4 times x, which opposite of multiplying is dividing. And when you divide a fraction, you have to take its reciprocal. So we have to multiply it by the opposite, which is 4/1. If I do it to this side, I must also multiply this side by 4/1. Now on this side, the 4's cross off, the 1's cross off, and it leaves me with 1x, or just x. I bring down the inequality, the less than, and this is -3 times 4, which is -12. So if I look at my number line, it probably needed it to go over just a little bit more on this. We'll put in -12 here. So there's no equal sign, so it doesn't include -12. So we want to open circle, and we want it going decreasing to the left. Okay? All right, next let's try this problem over here. So pause the video, write down the problem, and try to find the answer. And then start it again when you're ready. Okay, when you've completed this problem, you should have found that x is 4/3. So this problem has several different functions. It wants to see if you know how to distribute. It wants to see if you know how to add like terms. It wants to see if you know how to get variables from both sides to one side. So we took our notes, we said we should distribute first to get these parentheses to go away. So you need to remember that's -2 times x. So it's -2x. Now some of you guys like to do this differently. A lot of you guys like to change it, which is fine. But you need to remember this is -2 times -3. And a negative times a negative gives you a positive. So this should be plus 6. And then we bring down our -10. And then we're going to continue to write the rest of the problem. Okay, then the second step in our direction said, are there any simplifying to do? Well, look at this side. I can't combine an x with a constant, so there's nothing to do here. Here's my x, but when I look here, I see that there's two constants, so we can perform that. That is 6 minus 10. And a lot of you guys get tripped up on this signs here. You guys like to change it. And so 6 plus -10 should give us -4. And then we're going to just rewrite what else we have here. We have -2x. Oops. That becomes -4 equals -4x plus 12. Okay, so our next step was to get our variables together. Well, I've got a -2x on this side. I've got a -4x on this side. We need to change the sign of one of them and bring it over. And it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go ahead and do this negative 4x. The opposite is positive 4x. So negative 4x and positive 4x is 0. And when I add 4x here, negative 2x and 4x is just 2x. So I got my variables together. Now I need to get my constants or my regular numbers together. I'm going to bring down my equal sign here. So now my variable is on the left side, so I want my constant to be over on the opposite side, the right side. So that leaves me with negative 4 coming over to the 12. The opposite of negative or minus 4 is plus 4, because negative 4 and positive 4 is 0. And then we add the positive 4 over here too, and we get 16. Then we divide by 2, and then we have x equals 8. I think I said my answer is 3/4. I lied. It's 8. And when you're taking a test, you should always make sure it's right. Plug in 8 here. If we go back to beginning, we need to make sure this is right. So if I plug in 8 here, that becomes 8 minus 3, which is 5, right? So it becomes 5. This says negative 2 times 5. That gives me negative 10. Negative 10 gives me negative 20 on this side. If I plug in 8 here, I get negative 32. Negative 32 plus 12 is negative 20. So if those two things are equivalent, my answer for x is correct. All right, let's move down to this problem here on the left. Write it down, pause it, and solve it. Okay, so hopefully you looked at this, and this says this is greater than or equal to negative x, or negative. So we need to get x by itself. So we got to get rid of all adding and subtracting. So I have minus 14, or sometimes you guys like to do this plus negative. So opposite of that is adding 14. Negative 14 and positive 14 is 0. So we got to add the 14 here. And again, we have those integers you have to deal with. So negative 6 plus 14 gives me 8. 8 is less than or equal to 2x. Got to solve for x now. 2 times x, the opposite is dividing by 2. So divide by 2 here, and we get x is less than or equal to 8. And remember, you guys seem to have a hard time when the x is on the left, so switch everything around. Move the x to this side, move the 4 to this side, and flip this around. So it reads x is greater than or equal to 4. So equals to means we need a point, including 4, and greater than this way. And so remember that means 4, all numbers 4 and higher can be plugged in for x. All right, so hopefully we did well on that. I'd like you to come over to this one, pause it, write it down, and solve it. And then press the play when you're ready for the answer. All right, this one is a compound formula. And remember, we're sharing this middle with this side and this side. So we break this up into 2 separate problems. There's this problem, which we'll rewrite over here. Negative 2 is less than x plus 4. Then we share the middle part again. There's this problem, which becomes x plus 4 is less than or equal to, oops, messed that up, sorry. Plus 4, which is less than or equal to 14. Okay, so that middle part goes this side and this side. We've got to separate them out. And that's just simple solving. Look over here, we got to get x by itself. The opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4, or positive and negative 4. So we get negative 4 here, and that gives me negative 6 is less than x. Okay, then we're going to come over to the other side, and again we're going to subtract the 4. Positive 4, negative 4 is 0. Subtract the 4 here, and that is 10. So that's x is less than or equal to 10. Now remember, we have to write this in compact form. So we're going to bring these x's and put them in the middle. And then we're going to bring back this less than or equals to 10. and then we're going to bring down this greater than -6. So that's written in compact form. Then the tricky part is graphing this. This says x is less than or equal to 10. So here's my 10. It's going to be a closed circle, and it's going to go this way. Now, still some of us have a hard time reading this when the x is on the left. So again, if you have a hard time, switch it around. Move the x over here, move the -6 over here, and switch the sign. And that says x is greater than -6. So that's going to go this way. So it's an and, so they should meet. And it should look like that. Okay, but your answer must be written in this compact form here. So make sure you have your answer in compact form and then your graph. Okay, all right, let's move down to the next one. We have some inequalities here, or excuse me, absolute value. So again, oops, I think, can't really see that. Okay, write down the absolute value problem, pause it and solve it, and come back. Okay, so we look at this one, and we always should evaluate it first. This says these absolute brackets means everything in here is going to be a positive number. So what I want you to think about is this is positive numbers are greater than or equal to -2. Now, is that true? Are your positive numbers is any positive number going to be greater than -2? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, all of those will be greater. So no matter what we put in here, the answer will be positive. All positive numbers are greater than -2. So we don't need any math on this. We just need to say that this is all real numbers. And what that means is we can put any value in for x, and then this statement will be true. Now, I also want you to think about if this were the opposite way. Let's say we had this way, less than -2. If we had this absolute value. Now, again, we said everything in here is going to be positive. So no matter what, my answer is going to be positive, either +1, 2, and up. So are these positive numbers less than -2? Do you ever have a positive number that's smaller than -2? The answer would be no. All positive numbers are greater than 2. So this is where you have your no solution problem. Okay? So it depends on if it's greater than, because all positive numbers are greater than. So that's going to be all real numbers. However, positive numbers are not less than a negative. So therefore, that's an absolute or no solution. All right, and then let's move over to this next one here. This will be our last one. Pause it, solve it, graph it. Okay, so this one we have to remember that there's two answers for this, because this says less than 15, right? This makes it positive. However, I can also have -15 in there, because the absolute value of -15 is +15. So my answer in here can be 15 or -15. So we have to find the values for both. So the first step is just to take this and solve it without the absolute value brackets to get our first answer. The second part is to be able to figure out what the -15 is. And so I always write this out right away, so don't forget to do it. We have the 2x plus 5. But we want to find the opposite. So oops. Just want to find the opposite. So we'll rewrite this 2x plus 5. And the opposite means the opposite. So that's just going to change to greater than and -15. Okay, so remember you got to flip both sides. Okay. All right, so if we go back and solve this side, we subtract our 15. Make sure these are right. 5 minus 5 is 0. And then 15 minus 5 is 10. So we have 2x is less than 10. And then divide by 2. And we have x is less than 5. Okay. We get to this side. And again, you subtract 5 again. 5 minus 5 is 0. Subtract 5 here. Remember, that's -15 and -5. That's -20. And then we have the 2x. So we have 2x is greater than negative 20.